Hi all, in today's video we're going to be going over the trig equations checkup number 1. Okay, so the first two questions are actually questions that I asked you, and the questions are from the notes. So when you're observing this or when you're watching this, I'd like you to be copying this down into section 13.2 part A, where it's asking you, can we solve basic trigonometric equations? Okay, so the first two questions are actually from the notes. I'm going to ask you to copy these down into your notes, okay? But also check how you managed to get on by trying them yourself. So the first questions gave us cos of x equals 0.456, okay? So I've been told what my cos x value is. It's something positive, so I need to draw my cast diagram and work out where cos is positive. So if I draw my cast diagram, all sine, tan, cos, we should be getting plenty of practice of that. Put my degrees in, okay, so 0 round to 90, round to 180, down to 270, back to 0. That's my first quadrant. My second's over here, third's down at tan, and my last quadrant's fourth. Okay, and the last thing to remember is just remember your rules. So it's a x there, 180 minus x, 180 plus x, and 360 minus x. Okay, so that never changes at all. So we need to tick which boxes or which quadrants we're going to be working in. So because cos is positive, I'm going to tick the cos quadrant. Okay, that's going to be the fourth one. But I need to remember that A stands for all, and that's when all graphs are positive. So that means cos is also positive there. So I'm dealing in the first and fourth quadrant. Okay, so in the first quadrant, I am working out when cos of x equals 0.456. Okay, so I need to do the cos inverse of 0.456, and that should give me on my calculator 62.8707 continued, which rounds to two decimal places, 62.87 degrees. Okay, so I've got my first answer in my first quadrant. Okay, I now need to work out what it is in my fourth quadrant. So I don't need to do all the working again. I just need to remember what the rule is in the fourth quadrant. The rule in the fourth quadrant means I do 360, take away my answer x, so that's going to be 360 minus 62.87, which would then give me an answer of 297.13 degrees. Okay, and there's a good point at this point just to write your solutions next to each other, which I'm doing here. So x would be 62.87 degrees and 297.13 degrees. Okay, so that is the two solutions we got. Okay, so that's the first solution for the first question that we've done in the progress check, the checkup, and it's also the first one to put into your notes in section 13.2 part A. Okay, next question. Okay, so we're now asked to solve a sine question, but sine is now negative. So we're going to draw a cast diagram and work out where would sine have its negative values. Okay, so all sine, tan, cos. Okay, if you'll get quicker at drawing this out. It's always the same 4 things that you need to do. Okay, so you write your ASTC, your cast. You then put in your degrees, label your quadrants, and then remember to put in your rules to help you solve this. Okay, so as long with the letters, I should say, the rules are very important to have with us. Okay, so I need to work out when sine is this negative value, negative 0.87. Now, when sine is positive, I'd be ticking the all box, or the all quadrant, and the sine quadrant. So because it's negative, it means that we tick the other two that we wouldn't normally pick. So it's actually going to be in the third quadrant and the fourth quadrant, my two solutions. The main thing is I still need to work out my answer x, which is in my first quadrant. Okay, even though it won't be an actual solution, I still need to work out what x will be so I can work out the answer for the third and fourth quadrant. Now also, and I put this in my notes in the videos, you should have made a note of this, it is important to note that the negative tells us what boxes we tick in our quadrants, what quadrants we tick, sorry. It doesn't go in the calculator. So at this point, because I know where my solutions are, I can now drop the negative. So I'm going to work out when sine x equals 0.871 take the sine inverse, and what we should get, or what I get anyway, is 60.570, and if we round that, we get 60.58 degrees. Okay, now even though that is my answer X, that won't be one of my solutions, but I need it to get my my first and second solution. Okay, so in the third quadrant, rule says I do 180 plus X, so that's going to be 180 plus 60.58, which is going to be 240.58 degrees. Okay, so my first answer is 240.58 degrees. Okay, if we move along to my fourth quadrant, so that's where my other tick was. Rule is 360 minus X, so it's 360 minus my answer, which was 60.58, and that gives me an answer of 299.42 degrees. Okay, therefore my solutions this time, and this is why we always get you to write your solutions out, it's even more important in this case, because not all three numbers that you see that we've had to work out are my solutions, it's the numbers that were in the third and fourth quadrant as we've ticked them. So it's 240 degrees, 0.58 I should say degrees, and 299.42 degrees there. Okay, so there are my two solutions for that question there. So that was the second example to be filled into your notes. Okay, the next questions were questions where we have to rearrange in order to work out the values. So starting off with this question, the first thing I'm going to do, I need to get rid of this plus 2. So how we get rid of a plus 2 is we take away 2. That means that my equation becomes 3 tan x equals negative 0.8. Okay, so 1.2 take away 2 is negative 1.8. Last bit, I need to get rid of the 3 now. So we'll divide both sides by 3. Now, even though this might look messy, remember this is all going to go into a calculator, so the most important thing here is just keep it as a fraction, keeps it exact. So we get negative 0.8 divided by 3. Let me see if I can just change that bit there. Yep, negative 0.8 divided by 3. Okay, so I've worked out that tan is actually going to be a negative value. So let's get my cast diagram out now. I can now tell what quadrants to tick because I know tan is now negative. I had to rearrange that to find out. So I can only tell once I've got tan x what boxes or what quadrants to tick. So I'm going to do this just now, put my rules in. Okay, remembering this is something that you will need to remember to do for any questions asked. It's not something that is given to you, okay, on the formula page, so you do need to make sure you're practicing and writing this down at all times, okay. So tan is going to be something negative, so if it was positive I'd tick the all box and I'd tick the all quadrant, the tan quadrant as well. But because it's negative, I tick the opposite too, which means it's going to be the second quadrant and the fourth quadrant. That's where my answers lie, okay? So about the last question. So I still need to work out what my first value is for x, okay? So that's in my first quadrant. So that means I'm going to work out the tan of, now I drop the negative, so it's 0.8 over 3, okay? So x equals the tan inverse of 0.8 over 3. And if I do that correctly, then what I should get, where's my cursor went, there it's there, I get the answer 14.9314, which becomes 14.93 degrees. Okay, so that is not one of my answers, but that is going to help me work out my answers. So my first one is going to be located in the second quadrant. I'll do that over here. Rule is 180 minus x, so it's 180 minus 14.93 degrees, and that gives me an answer of 165.07 degrees. Fourth quadrant's where my last solution lies. So that's going to be 360 minus x, so that's 360 minus 14.93, and I get the answer 345.07 degrees. Okay, so write down my solutions. Therefore, my answer becomes 165.07 degrees, and the other one, don't need the equals here, I can just write a comma, make it a list, drop that out, and I get 345.07 degrees. Okay, so those were my two solutions for that question. So we had to rearrange that and then solve, and it was a negative, so we had a bit extra work to do. Okay, and the last question that you were asked to do, okay, we had to work out when 5 sin x plus 1 equals 0. So again, we need to rearrange this. Let's get rid of the plus 1 first. So if we get rid of that plus 1, it's negative 1. So that means I take negative 1 on both sides. Therefore, now I think, folks, sorry about this, I think I've actually wrote this question wrong. Let me just change that a bit. Probably all screaming at the video thinking it's not. That's better. So it was actually take away 1 in the question. That'll make me have a chance of getting this right now. So let's drop this out. Okay, so we have to add 1 to get rid of a negative 1. That looks better. Okay, so that becomes 5 sin x equals 1. Divide by 5 on both sides. I get sin x equals a fifth. Okay, just keep it as a fraction. Okay, the main thing is I know sin x is actually a positive value. So let's work out when this happens here. So I've got all sine, tan, cos, get my degrees on. Okay, get my rules on. And last but not least, let's label the quadrants too. Okay, so sine of x is a positive value, so I'm working out when sine is positive. So sine is positive in the sine quadrant, the second one, and it's also positive when they're all positive, and that's what the A stands for there. So I'm going to tick that one too. So my first answer is actually my first quadrant this time. So let's work out that one first. So the first quadrant, I'm working out when sine of x is a fifth. Therefore, I'm working out the sine inverse of 1 over 5. So put that in your calculator. Give myself some more space here. So if I do that in my calculator, x would give me the answer of 11.5369. Continued. Round that, I get 11.54 degrees. Okay, which then will be one of my answers this time. My second answer lies in the second quadrant. The rule was we do 180 minus x for that one, so that's going to be 180 minus 11.54 degrees, and that gives me an answer of 168.46 degrees. So my solutions, x would equal 11.54 degrees and 168.46 degrees. Okay, so those were the solutions. It took a bit longer because each question does take a bit of time. Remember to write down the first two solutions into your notes, okay? So make sure if you missed anything, go back, rewind it, fill it in, and check your answers for the last two questions. The last two questions are a bit more tricky with a bit of rearranging to do, but once we do that, we're into a form that we should know how to solve. Okay, thanks for listening.